I've been intimate with a ghost. I know what you're thinking, and I'm thinking it too. What the f***? I don't know my approach to this story, but there's a main comment here on this post that reads, I feel like the woman in white was some random woman he hit and killed while driving home. Jeepers! It scared the absolute... You probably saw the fear in my eyes. That scared the fuck out of me. Anyways, wow. Whew, okay. He hit and killed while driving home drunk from the bar one night. So, I am going to read this story as serious as I possibly can because this is absurd. Many places have a woman in white legend. The legend in my town goes like this. About 150 years ago, a woman and man were to be married. The courtship was short, the engagement was shorter. The bride waited for the groom at the church, but he never showed, nor did any guests on his side. The emotionally destroyed young bride ran outside the chapel and into the street, and she was run over by a horse and carriage. She died on the spot. When the families of the bride returned to their homes, they found them completely empty. The groom and his buddies had robbed the empty houses and they split town. The wedding was a scam. According to the legend, the spirit of the young bride lives on. She wanders near the remains of the old church in a white dress, and if you stop to pick her up, the bride will exact vengeance on your spouse/future spouse. She'll curse them, and sooner or later, your better half will die horrifically. Of course, this is all just local BS. People say they've seen her, kids mostly. Some have even claimed to have picked her up, but there's no photos, no video, just tales around a campfire, and everyone thinks it's a load of crap. The legend is just too popular to be true. Every person in the town knows it, which sucks the mystery out of the entire story, but I've actually met the woman in white, and here's my story. Okay. I'm going through a divorce. It's crappy and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. Thank God we never had any kids. I'm in my early 30s, so at least I learned my lesson early on. I'm never getting married again. Every Tuesday night, I head about 10 miles out of town to a bar to meet up with buddies. It's a weekly tradition to help cheer me up from my miserable divorce proceedings. We've been doing it for months, and because the bar is out of the way, down an old country road that sees little to no traffic on a Tuesday night, it's not uncommon for me to drive home after having 5 or 6 beers. Maybe we shouldn't admit to that. Dumb? Yes, but I rarely see another car, and I always make it home with only a headache in the morning. Until you hit someone else. But anyway, about 2 months ago was when I saw her for the first time. I was driving home from the bar around 1 in the morning, slightly buzzed, when I spotted her, a woman in a long white dress ambling through knee-high weeds along the side of the road. It was foggy, I was going 50 miles per hour, but I was certain that it was the woman in white dress. My head turned and we made eye contact for a split second. I zoomed past. I looked in my rearview mirror and she was gone. The following Tuesday, I saw her again, trudging through weeds in the same spot. I had forgotten all about her from the previous week. Because you were drunk. I sped past again, tightening my grip on the steering wheel. The booze was making me see things. Of course, I had heard about the legend of the woman in white, but I'm a grown man and I don't believe in stuff like that. I checked the rearview mirror. Again, she was gone. Same thing the next Tuesday. Oh, we're just drinking and driving on a weekly basis. Same thing the next Tuesday, but this time I drive a little slower to make sure I'm not going crazy. I got a good look. It's a thin woman in her early 20s in a stained white lacy dress. Long brown hair, pale skin. And even though she's trudging through weeds, it's almost graceful. My eyes travel up and down her body from head to toe. She's absolutely stunning. One of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. We make eye contact again and we hold it for a little bit longer this time. She smiles and I consider pulling over. I can taste the booze on my lips and that reminds me that I'm drunk. I'm imagining her. I turn my head to see if she's still there and under the moonlight I see it. An old, broken down church about 30 yards from the road. I press my foot on the gas and get the hell out of there. I woke up in my bed with a hangover. Sir, I'm thinking maybe we don't go out and drink every week. Following Tuesday, I'm probably 8 beers in the hole when I leave the bar. drunk as a skunk. Perfect time to drive. I see the woman in white again, same spot on the country road, stumbling gracefully through the weeds. I accelerate to 80 miles per hour, my car kicking up dirt on the old road. I don't look back. Curiosity would get the better of me the following Tuesday. I nursed one beer all night. I wanted to be sober and convince myself that my mind wasn't playing tricks on me. I left the bar a little after midnight, and sure enough, the woman in white was there on the same stretch of road. I passed her, slowed, and pulled over on the shoulder. The car idled, and I sat with sweaty palms on the wheel. I looked in my mirrors, and I couldn't spot her. I turned my head, looked back, and didn't see one trace of her. My head turned forward, and I almost jumped out of my seat. The woman in white was standing 5 feet in front of my car, arms at her side. She smiled, and I opened the passenger door. That would never be what I'm doing. She hesitated, and then she walked to the open door. She stood there. "Do you need a ride?" I said. She delicately sat down in the passenger seat and closed the door. The bottom half of her dress was filthy. She looked at me with soft green eyes. "Where are you supposed to be?" I asked. She looked down, and for some reason I already felt comfortable enough to brush the hair out of her eyes. She reached up and gently touched my hand. Her skin was cold, too cold. Her eyes met mine. "Can I take you somewhere?" I asked again. "Take me with you," she said, almost in a whisper. "Oh, sorry. Take me with you." That's how she did it. I swallowed and removed my hand from hers. I put the car into drive and headed back to my house. I asked her a few questions. "What's your name? Where are you from?" But she remained silent. She pulled her knees up to her chest and stared out the window. But she didn't seem frightened. If anything, she seemed happy to be safe. We arrived at my house and I led her inside. I offered her a glass of water, but she shook her head. She crawled under the covers in a spare room and fell asleep. I left and shut the door, as if I'm allowing that to happen. And I immediately headed for my laptop. I checked Google News and my local online newspaper for news of missing women in the area. I found nothing and fell asleep. I woke up at 6 in the morning. I cracked the door of the guest room. The woman in white was still there. I showered, ate breakfast, and left a note for her on the kitchen table. "Eat anything you want, and if you aren't here when I get home, that's fine." What? Take this woman being a ghost. You're just gonna let a stranger roam free in your house? Like, "Oh, take anything you want that I own. Go ahead." I thought about her all day at work. The soft face, those green eyes. 3 times I picked up the phone to call the police and tell them I found a missing person. But each time I put the phone back into the receiver. I can't explain why, because they'd laugh at me for saying I found the mysterious woman in white. I'm not sure, but I didn't call. Yeah, I think that's what they would say. She's still in the guest room when I get home from work, and she's still in the same dirty dress. And she still wouldn't talk. I grabbed my soon-to-be ex-wife's shorts and t-shirt and a towel, and I led my mystery guest to the bathroom. I turned on the shower for her, and I placed her hand under the warm water. She pulled back a little, finally, she cracked a smile. I left the bathroom, shutting the door behind me. The shower is turned off 20 minutes later. I hear her return to the guest room. I crack the door an hour later, and she is asleep on the bed. Wet hair, but she has put back on the white dress. She is softly snoring. We made love for the first time the next night. I mean, that was in the title. Why am I surprised? Okay, I had awoken in the middle of the night to get a glass of water from the kitchen. I crawled back into bed, but I didn't feel alone. I turned over and nearly pissed myself from shock. She's under my covers and she pulls me close to her. She isn't wearing the dress. Oh. And I feel her cold, naked body pressed against me. I fall asleep soon after it's over, and I wake up alone. I have a lot of questions about that interaction if she's a ghost. She is back in the guest room in her white dress. Her behavior grows increasingly stranger over the next couple of days. In the middle of the night, I'd hear footsteps all around the house. Up and down the hallway, up and down the stairs, rummaging in the refrigerator, weird metallic banging from the basement. Once I swore I heard footsteps in the attic. Each time I investigated, I found her asleep in the guest room. Yeah, hell no. One time I came home from work to find a large piece of carpet torn up in my bedroom. I had to rip out the whole thing, and she still never said a word to me. Nothing after "take me with you" from inside the car. But every night we make love. I like that he calls it making love. Like, you're in love? Y'all are in love? Like, even if I'm pretending that I believe this, y'all are in love? What's weird is that obviously I don't believe that he slept with a ghost, but I believe that he believes this, which makes it really creepy. Like, what actually happened that this story is present in your mind and you're fully believing it? That's what's disturbing. I never asked her to, not once. She just comes in my room, literally. Whoa, that was violently inappropriate. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna get canceled. The sixth night she doesn't show, so I just go to sleep. I wake to her standing at the edge of my bed, bathed in moonlight, wearing nothing. She crawls into bed with me. I have no idea how long she'd been standing there. I canceled my bar plans with the buddies the next Tuesday. Told them I wasn't up for it. It seemed weird to leave my woman in white. I'd left her for work during the day, but never at night. Around 8 p.m., headlights streamed into my living room. My buddies were at my house, unannounced. Oh, I would love to hear how you explain this to them. I couldn't let them see the woman in white. I quickly shuttled her to the basement and I told her to wait down here until my friends left. She sat on an old couch and I went upstairs to greet my friends. They were worried about me, and they were here to play cards. After about an hour of playing poker in my living room, I went to the fridge to grab a few more beers. When I got back, my buddy Ryan was gone. My other friend Chris said Ryan had smelled something weird and heard odd noises coming from the basement. He went to investigate. Trying not to look too concerned, I quickly headed down to the basement and found Ryan poking around. He said he smelled rotten fruit and thought he heard a strange crash. Thankfully, he hadn't seen my woman in white. He headed back upstairs when suddenly a cold hand reached around and covered my face from behind. It pulled me back into a dark corner underneath the staircase. I knew the coldness of the hand. It was my woman in white, and she shushed me quietly. I reached backwards and felt for her. I ran my hand up and down her cold skin. She wasn't wearing the dress. She just likes being naked. She was wearing nothing. She released me and I spun around. What is going on? We made love quietly and quickly on the floor. Okay, and I returned upstairs to the game. I never smelled the rotten fruit. I have so many questions and concerns. Concerns more than questions. Guys, we need to hop on hydration station because I'm starting to feel like the woman in white, okay? Dead inside. Cheers. I hope you're having a good day. Drink some water. It's good for you. Cheers. That night, I heard sobbing from the guest room. I cracked the door and she was sitting on the bed, head in hands, crying. I pushed open the door a little more. Anne was about to speak when her head jerked up. The crying is silenced and she stared at me with what I swear were glowing eyes. There was intent in those eyes. For some reason, I thought she wanted to harm me. After a minute or two, I backed away and I closed the door. I slept with my door locked. She didn't visit me that night. Well, yeah, you locked the door. The following day, I made up my mind. I'm taking her back where I found her. I had no idea who she was or where she came from, but I figured I should take her back to the exact same spot at the exact same time that I originally found her. A little after midnight, she gets into my car willingly, and she balls up the same way she did a week ago. There were no words between us. I drive to what I think is the spot, and I pull over. I idle the engine, get out, and walk around to the passenger side. I open her door, and she gets out and just starts ambling through the weeds again. She doesn't look back. I took a look around for the old church I saw one time, but I didn't see it. I put my car into gear, pull a U-turn, and drive off. This time, I see her in the mirror walking into a wooded area. She vanishes into the trees. I am fearful of her return. A woman in white was out of my life as quickly as she came into it, and I thought she might want to come back. And I had stopped thinking about lovemaking. All I saw were those glowing eyes. I was nervous, so I began drinking that night. I set up a home security system and triple checked my doors and windows every night to make sure they were locked. I cleaned the whole house top to bottom, scrubbed every square foot to floor, every inch of wall. I wanted every trace of her gone, and maybe if the house smelled different, she wouldn't find her way back. She wasn't an animal, but it just felt better this way. It felt like I was cleansing myself of her, but she didn't come back. 2 weeks later, I'm at a convenience store in town buying a 12-pack of beer. Obviously. I overheard a couple of teenagers talking about a woman in white and how one of them had seen her along a dusty road late at night. She looked murderous, he said, and the flesh was melting off her face as she cackled with laughter, chasing after his car in the darkness. The listening friend punched the other in the shoulder. "Stop BSing me, dude," he said. I paid for my beer and walked outside. I noticed a missing person sign taped to the storefront. If y'all tell me this is real, and here I am, totally shitting on this guy. Okay, it was a woman in her early 30s, last seen a few weeks ago. Oh, blonde hair, 5'4", 115 pounds. Last seen wearing black pants and a black tank top. It wasn't my woman. Okay. My woman always wore white and she had brown hair, but it got me thinking, this missing woman, someone must really miss her, and she probably misses whoever put up that sign. I started my car and drove down the road, and I wondered if I should pay my woman in white another visit. I wondered if she missed me. That's what you're wondering? I was hesitant to go back. It seemed like I had it pretty good for the week that the woman in white stayed with me. Sure, she did some weird stuff, ripping up my carpet, sneaking around at night, making terrible noises in the basement, but she just wanted me for no reason at all. Hold on.
The situation has been resolved. It is now safe to return to the building. Thank you for your cooperation.
Sir, I never left the building. I was going down with it because I didn't leave. And take it from a guy going through divorce and drinks on a daily basis. There's nothing like feeling wanted. So yeah, I guess it was wanting to be wanted that led me back to the spot on the old country road last night. Those feelings compelled me to go against my better judgment. I was terrified of what I might find for abandoning her, but I had to go. But first, let me explain a little bit about the last few days. After I dropped the woman in white back on the road last week, I was paranoid as hell, worried that I'd somehow done a very, very bad thing and that I would pay for it. I scrubbed my house clean and installed a home security system. I've even looked into buying a dog, thinking it might help alert me to things going bump in the night or whatever. And there was no sign of her, nor any sign of anything weird happening. But then this incident with the keys happened. I've always been a forgetful bastard. Lila, girl, figure it out. What you doing? Oh my God, this girl's jumping on everything in this room. She hates the fire alarms. My wife used to do everything. She paid the bills, organized our calendar, did the shopping, and generally reminded me of anything that I had to do. Whenever I would get home from work, I would just toss my car keys in any place at all. Couch, bed, bathroom. One time they wound up in the fridge of all places. But my wife would always find them and put them back on the hook for me next to the door. It might be the only thing that I miss about her. Since I've been alone, I'm constantly late to work. I'm not sleeping off hangovers. I function just fine, but I can't find my GD keys in the morning. Ever. I search around for 10 minutes every morning until I find them, hustle out the door, and proceed to be that guy that comes in late every day. My boss has been letting it slide, probably because I'm a broken person going through a divorce. I think he feels bad for me. Yesterday morning, I went through my standard ritual, eating breakfast, pouring myself a cup of coffee, and asking myself the daily question, where the hell are my keys? Maybe if you just hung them up. Just saying. I begin my usual routine of kicking around the pizza boxes and overturning couch cushions when I spot them. My keys are sitting on the kitchen table. It might be the only time I'd ever left them in a logical place since my wife left me. I grab the keys and head out to the garage. I hit the garage door opener, start the car, and realize I'm missing something. I left my coffee inside. I leave the car running and jog inside, where a curious sight awaits me. Sitting next to my cup of coffee is a set of keys. My keys. The hell? I hear the engine of my car get turned off. Something is definitely not right. I slowly walk outside. My car is right where I left it. The driver's side door is ajar, and there are no keys in the ignition. I search the car and don't see another set of keys. This sounds like glitch in the Matrix stuff, but since what I've been through, it's unsettling. I'm edgy at work, thinking about the situation. I try to convince myself that I'm just a forgetful and paranoid drunk. I probably turned the car off on the first time and then set them next to the coffee and forgot having done it. It all happened so fast anyway. I push it out of my mind. That night, last night actually, I'm at our usual bar with my buddies. One by one, they trickle out, but I stay until closing time. I'm not drinking at my usual rate. I maybe only have 4 beers over 4 hours. I tuned out my friends most of the night. I just sat there fiddling with my keys, the ones with the beer bottle opener and stupid moose keychain that I bought in the Boundary Waters when my wife and I camped 3 years ago. Did the keys I grabbed this morning from the kitchen table have those? Christ, I couldn't remember. A little after 1, I'm on the country road. Beads of sweat gather on my forehead and I flex my fingers on the wheel. I'm approaching the spot. Part of me wants to speed through, another part wishes to hit the brakes and see if my woman in white is still there. I look down and see the keys in my ignition. The moose dangles from the chain and my mind flashes to that one camping trip with my wife. Those were good times. Great times. Before the fighting, before the blaming, and before the guy from Colorado. Ooh. At that point in my life, I felt loved. I hit the brakes and I pulled over to the shoulder. I lean back in my seat, breathing heavily. I look around, nothing. I open the door and step outside and I slam the door shut. It echoes in the night and the sound disappears. All I hear are crickets. I lean against my car and I drop my head. And then the sounds fill the summer air. Sobbing, moaning, coming from the woods where I saw my woman in white vanish last week. I pop open the hood and grab a flashlight that's buried underneath some tools, oily rags, and work gloves. I set out into the woods. Wait for her to come to you. It grows thick in a hurry, far more thicker than I ever thought it would be. The forest forms a canopy over my head, and I follow the gentle sobbing with the beam of my flashlight. The weeping gets louder and louder. I'm getting closer. I spotted her, the woman in white, crouched underneath a tree, stained white dress, head in hands. I cautiously approach and I kneel down. I touch my hand to her shoulder and she doesn't move, continues to sob. I'm sorry, I say. I'm so sorry. Would you come back with me? Her head starts to move. She's about to look up and I fear those glowing eyes that I saw the last night she stayed with me. Those murderous, burning eyes. But her eyes are soft and green. I wipe away the tears from her cheek and I carry her back to my car. I gently place her in the passenger seat and walk around to the driver's side. I look at her in the moonlight. She looks paler than before, malnourished, sickly. We arrive at my house and she is able to walk inside. My woman in white immediately goes to the guest room. I help her to the bed and she lays down. I'm about to walk away and let her rest because that's what I've always done, but her hand grabs my wrist. It's colder than usual. Her thumb moves back and forth against my wrist and she smiles tenderly. She pulls me into the bed and I allow her. I think I know where this is going. Her strength, that passion, it quickly returns. My woman in white gets on top. Oh my God. Okay, rated R. What I'm about to read. We have entered a corno. My woman in white gets on top of me. She pulls off my pants, but she doesn't remove the dress this time. She just yanks up the bottom. But as we make love, it's hard to focus because of the rattling. As she moves up and down, faster and faster, her dress rattles and jingles. Is it his keys? Tell me it's his keys. My hand reaches around and I feel her hips over the dress, thinking there must be a pocket. I can't find one on the outside. I reach inside her dress and my hands travel onto her waist. On the right side of her dress is a pocket sewn into the inside. I grab what's inside and grip them in my palm. When we finish, my woman in white says nothing, lays down, and closes her eyes. I leave the room, gently shutting the door behind me. In the light of the hallway, I see what I've grabbed. It's a set of keys. Car keys, house keys, keys for the office. I recognize these. They're my keys. But there's no bottle opener, no moose, just keys. Did she make copies? I looked all around for my original keys this morning, but I had no idea where I put them. I probably tossed them somewhere as usual. They'll turn up, they always do. But lucky for me, the woman in white had somehow made a spare set. Oh, That's casual. I'm at work right now and I assume my woman in white is back in her guest room, or maybe she's wandering around my house like she did all last night, or making a weird metal scratching noise from the basement like she did around 2:30 in the morning, or maybe she's violently scratching on my bedroom door and moaning like she did at 3 in the morning. This sounds terrible, but she never did come into my room. It was unlocked. She easily could have come in. She chose not to, but I'm just glad she's safe. I think I'll try to figure out who she really is, or who she really was, if that makes sense. And I do want to find my original keys, and I want to find that moose keychain, because as much pain as my wife caused me, those were some good memories. I think I'd like to remember those. I waited at my hotel all day. My wife didn't show. I called her cell phone once, twice, maybe 3 times, straight to voicemail each time. On the 4th try, her boyfriend answered. "Stop calling me," he snarled. "You'll live to regret it." He hung up. So I sent her an email. "I'm an Eli. You're not answering your phone and you didn't show up. Are you coming? All I want is a fresh start. It will be hard, but I think we can put all of this behind us. Maybe we can act like none of our baggage of stuff ever happened. I'm willing to give it a shot. I know we have a complicated history, but we can do it. I dream about meeting you again for the first time. A clean slate. I'm here." Okay, so we just ditched the woman in white. Now we're trying to get back with, our ex-wife who cheated on you and who has a boyfriend. Hello. I woke up on Tuesday morning, still no sign of my wife. Ex-wife? Well, technically still married. I pick up my phone and dial her number again, even after the dire warning of the guy in Colorado. No rings, it goes straight to voicemail. I left her a short message. "You never showed," I said. "I don't get it." I searched for more words, but none come through. I hung up and my head was flooded with thoughts and emotions. Maybe the woman in white had found her. Maybe the Colorado guy had stopped my wife from going. And I was all alone in Ely, Minnesota with a car full of camping gear and a permit for 2. Then another thought entered my head and it washed away all the other ones. This is my fault. All of it. I was too much of an F-up to put it all together, but I regretted every choice I made the last few months. I needed to get my stuff together. I sent my wife another email. "I'm going in. Maybe you'll be here when I return to civilization on Thursday." I grabbed what was left of my case of beer and went to the bathroom. I opened each remaining can, about 8 or 10, and dumped each down the drain. Claps and snaps. I think that's a good idea. As the booze swirled and vanished, a slight load was lifted from my shoulders. I knew kicking the habit was more than just dumping a few cans of Coors Light down the sink, but damn it, it was a start. Yes, it is. I checked out of my hotel and drove to the Outfitters. Even though my wife wasn't here, I was doing it anyway. I was going to follow through with something and I was going to clear my head. I was going effing camping. An Outfitter employee helped me tie my rented canoe to my car and I drove another 50 minutes to my drop-in zone. I dumped my boat into the water and a park ranger helped me load my bag of gear into the middle of the canoe. He grimaced as he did so. "This is a pretty heavy bag for one guy," he said. "Just what do you get in this thing anyway?" I just shrugged, slightly embarrassed. I didn't tell him that I packed for 2. I paddled all day, following my map. I wanted seclusion. As the day progressed, I saw less and less paddlers and campers. At the beginning of my voyage, every site along my route was taken. By midday, the sites were hit or miss. By evening, I found a lake that I had all to myself. There were 5 other sites dotted around the lake, but none of them were taken. I chose a site on a small island. Exhausted from paddling and portaging all day, I dumped my gear on shore and laid down. I stared up at the cloudy sky. I was finally alone. I set up my tent and munched on some Cliff Bars and trail mix. Oh, I love both of those. I was too tired to fish or make a fire. I laid down in my sleeping bag inside the tent, hearing nothing but loon calls and gentle sounds of waves on rocks. I slept for a while and then I woke up in the middle of the night. I turned over on my side and I just stared at my pack in the corner of my tent. It started to rock, ever so slightly. I squinted my eyes and it moved again, gently rocking. And then I heard the zipper slowly beginning to unzip. One tooth at a time, I squinted harder, unable to move, paralyzed in the darkness. A pale finger reached out of my bag and then another. A hand reached out from the opening and grabbed the zipper from the outside and the hand pulled it open even further. A wrist, an elbow, an entire arm now. We know who this is. Hair fell from the bag onto the tent floor and I heard slight breathing. Panting. I'd heard this panting before. The zipper opened halfway and the woman in white wiggled out. Her body was folded up like it was a goddamn human origami. Her knees were next to her head, but her feet pointed in opposite directions. Oh my god, it's like a horror movie. When they have like their exorcism, they're like, and they're, you know, but she couldn't unfold. She panted harder, gave up, and began to slide towards my sleeping bag. Please unfold yourself first. Her face was covered with hair as she lurched over. She'd reach out her right hand, grip the tent floor, and pull herself towards me, 1 inch at a time, like a wounded animal. And I just watched her do it. I couldn't effing move. That's why it was so heavy. Yeah, you have a woman in there. Not that you knew of. She was inches away. I felt her cold breath on my face. She moved her head up and down, her straggly hair brushing against my cheeks. She then spoke her first words since I'd picked her up on that fateful night on that old country road. "Why?" she breathed. "Why?" I felt her tongue tickle the end of my nose, and it worked its way towards my mouth. It stopped on my mouth and worked a circle around my lips. Her tongue felt like an icicle. Her mouth opened and she exhaled into me. It smelled like a blast of hot garbage. I was finally able to move. My hand trembled upwards and I moved the hair from her face. My beautiful and smooth woman in white was a now deformed, rotting creature. A small smile formed at the corners of her ragged mouth and the twisted creature lunged forward. I screamed and shot up in my sleeping bag. My head swiveled quickly, examining all corners of my tent. My camping bag was still in the corner, unopened. The woman in white was just a dream. Okay. Like, today? Or the whole thing? I wiped the sweat from my forehead, unzipped my tent, and tossed the large bag outside as far as I could. I laid in fear all night, barely getting any sleep at all. I left the tent at first light. I watched the sunrise from a large rock on the island's edge. I reached into my pocket and I pulled out the moose keychain I'd purchased the day before. Oh, that's actually really sad. It was an exact replica of the one I'd lost, and it made me think of my wife. And I decided that I didn't deserve her. I was a damn nutcase and a fool to boot, but I'd do anything to win her back. But this woman in white, this woman that I'd gotten into bed with, she wouldn't let me move on. She'd always haunt me, even though I was trying to let her go. Maybe I'd never be able to let her go, but damn it, I was going to try. I stood and walked to my camping bag. It laid next to some trees in the same spot I'd thrown it in the middle of the night. I cautiously unzipped it and reached inside. My hands fell upon pots, pans, clothes, a bag of freeze-dried food, a small tackle box, and then I felt that familiar fabric. It was thin and ratty. I pulled it out. It was a white dress. I swore I had left it in the attic, but in my hassle to split town, I must have thrown it into the pack. Maybe the woman in white had somehow made me do it. I made a fire and tossed the effing thing into the flames. I watched it burn up and I felt a release. It was the same release as when I watched my beer circle around and vanish down the drain. Maybe I was free. I tossed my line that morning and caught quite the haul. I cleaned my catch and ate like a king that day. I cleaned up, buried the bones and fish heads in the woods, and relaxed in my tent with a book. I waited all night for the woman in white to come back. Every sound outside my tent was her walking around. Every small gust of wind was her brushing against my tent from the outside. She didn't come. Around 3 a.m, I heard a scream. A terrible, godforsaken, blood-curdling scream. A woman's scream. And then there was silence. It came from across the lake. I bounded from my tent and dragged my canoe to the water. Oh, that's bold. I pushed off from shore and guided my canoe by moonlight towards the direction of the scream. I was too curious. I reached the middle of the lake. It was so quiet you could hear the stars shining. There was no more screams, no commotion. I floated for 20 minutes just listening. Nothing. I paddled back to my campsite and slept like a baby. On Thursday, I packed up. I felt like a new man. I wasn't sure that I exorcised the woman in white from my life completely, but just the chance that I had filled with me something that I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I loaded up my canoe and I shoved off. I floated past another camper fishing in the lake. He had just arrived on my lake last night. He apologized to me just in case his wife had woken me up in the middle of the night. Is everything okay? I asked. She just had a nightmare, he said. I was telling ghost stories by the fire. Have you heard the one about the woman in white? I lied and said that I hadn't. I paddled all day and docked my canoe in the early evening at the same place that I had dropped in. The same ranger happened to be there and he helped me out of my canoe. He lifted my bag out and smiled. Either I'm getting stronger or this bag of yours got a whole lot lighter, he said. I smiled. I couldn't lie. This was the lightest I'd felt in months, I told him, and he just shook his head and laughed. I drove back to Eli, excited to grab a large burger and fries. I parked and walked to a little bar/eatery with outdoor seating that I'd seen when I was in town earlier in the week. I was 20 feet away from the restaurant when I stopped and my jaw just about hit the pavement. It was my wife, sitting alone at a table. I hadn't seen her in months and she looked great. Her hair was shorter and her skin was radiating like never before. She had come, after all. I couldn't believe it. She looked around like she was looking for someone, waiting for someone actually. Waiting for me. I approached her and she looked up at me and nervously smiled. The moose keychain was still in my pocket and I pulled it out. I remembered what I wrote to her in that email and it was all coming true. The way she looked at me, I knew that we had no past. No instances of stupid fighting, no name calling, no guy in Colorado. This was it. We were starting brand new, like we were meeting for the first time all over again. I sat down at her table. Hi, I'm Jackson, I said, barely containing my knowing grin. My wife blushed and she looked away slightly. She noticed the moose keychain dangling from my hand and then she looked at me and smiled. I'm Emily. A fresh start. I think I need a fresh start after that story. Let me know your thoughts. I think I've been very vocal about mine the entire time, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but a lot of questions and concerns still. Yeah. Stay classy out there, stay sassy, and I'll see you tomorrow.